Hello and welcome back inside the Parc Fermé for podcast 832. This is Todd.
No, Todd, not now!
AKA Negative Camber. You know why I've asked you here.
You must convince the villagers that I'm harmless.
That's exactly what I need you to do. Tonight, for your kind consideration, we have crafted a very special show for you tonight. It is the Stefano Domenicali Show. That's what we're going to be talking about. I'm super excited about that. But before doing that, I do have to introduce my guest. I have to go to the right coast of the United States of America, nestled in our nation's capital, sometimes referred to as Washington, D.C., other times referred to as the Swamp, although she doesn't live there. She lives just over the border. Right? But you know her. You love her. It is the lovely, the redoubtable
Grace!
Grace, how you doing?
Considering that it's been like 80 degrees for like 3 weeks now, it is still a swamp, even here in Maryland.
Yeah, I know.
You know, Kat, you're not helping out here today.
The cat is definitely wanting to be on the show.
I don't know why she started all that. Like, I never let her on my desk, and now she's like, "Oh, I see. You're recording. Now I shall be on your desk."
The desk is where I want to be.
Yeah. All right, Ziggy.
Yeah, it's life with the zig.
All I need is her to spill my wine. That would be great. All right.
That would be even better.
Yeah, it would be
Even better.
I'll just take the mic. And that sounds great, Todd. How's right? I mean, when it used to be audio only, you could get away with that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
But
I
now
know.
people will see me frantically, like,
I know.
you know,
Mopping up wine off your keyboard.
yeah, right.
That's
Like,
crazy.
yeah. Here.
I know. So I always love living in Maryland. I do, and I say this affectionately because I love all of my British friends, but I love when they get to the States and they start reading some of the names of the states, and they all call it Maryland.
Yes.
You know, so
That's
it's
Maryland.
and then they give us crap if we don't say certain British towns or
Yeah.
areas correctly. They guffaw at us as they should. But
I don't know. I mean, I always like Nottingham, like that's not really
Yeah.
what that word is. But no, I always think, but I can't be too critical, although these are French words instead of, British words. But, growing up in Pittsburgh, because of the French and Indian War, there's a lot of French towns and cities and stuff like that in the area.
Yeah.
So I never knew that it's not, we all pronounce the word as North Versailles. It's not. It's North Versailles. But
right.
nobody in Pittsburgh, if you said, I'm looking for North Versailles, they'd go, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
North Versailles. Oh yeah, that's across the bridge. That's right
Yeah.
over there. It's a lovely
Yeah.
town, North Versailles. They know where that is. So
I know. It's great.
I don't
I always
know.
feel sorry. It's like just over the river. In St. Louis and over in Illinois, there's a town, and it's NEW, new, and the second part is ATHEN. So you would think naturally it's New Athens. It's
Yeah.
not. They call it New Athens, right?
of course.
So yeah, so it's all those fun pronunciations like
It's just how we know who the locals are and who aren't.
who's
right?
local, right?
That's right. That's how you quick sorting. Like,
Well,
you're
you separate
not
the
from
wheat from
around
the
here.
chaff.
Yo, Kat, what is up with you tonight? Oh my gosh. Come on.
That's so
she
funny.
really wants to be on the show. Come on.
She does.
What are you doing?
Well, I'm glad she is on the show because hopefully she can make sense of Stefano.
Nobody can.
Nobody can.
Well,
I know.
I am looking forward to the Stefano Domenicali show. Like,
I know,
what
'cause-
could be more fun? I love
Because you're
this
going to
guy.
be like,
No one knows what it means, but it's provocative.
it is provocative.
It's almost like a show of Toto Wolff quotes. Like, what?
It is.
What are you trying to
It's
tell me,
true.
man? Yeah, so
Very
I love
true.
it.
Well, let's start off with the first one. I'm going to be talking tonight to you about Domenicali on Domination.
Okay.
Domenicali on Dosh. See how I borrowed the slang for money, to appease all of my British friends, and Domenicali on Pit. We're going to cover all of those stories and more. So if you just hang on or skip 10 minutes of the beginning of this episode, you'll get to this. No,
Wait, does that mean I get?
It hasn't been 10 minutes. Let's just start now, and then
No, do
everybody
I get-
skips 10.
I just got so excited. Does that mean I just get 10 minutes now to talk about whatever I actually want to talk about, and then
know.
we talk about Formula One?
Yeah.
Woo! My
We
dreams
should-
have finally come true 18 years later.
Yeah, see, we should start at just 5 minutes, and all those people that automatically go 10 minutes are going to miss 5 minutes of content.
Yeah, right.
See how that works?
Just keep them guessing. Sometimes
Keep
it's
'em
8
guessing.
minutes. Sometimes
gotta
it's
keep 'em frosty.
7:30.
Yeah,
That's
you gotta
right.
keep them frosty.
Listen to all of it.
Yeah, that's right. Let's start off at the top. Domenicali on Domination. Now, last week, I was on a rant, admittedly, about people complaining of the Red Bull domination and F1 changing rules in season, I might add, for sprint races and qualifying for sprint races, right? You'll recall, though, I was not alone. Not everyone was a fan of this, namely Red Bull and Max Verstappen, but neither was one Gunther Steiner. He was not happy with this as well, right? Now, I am convinced, because of this news story, I'm convinced, as Grace and I often joke, that Stefano listens to the podcast.
Oh, absolutely.
Because just a week later, we get this quote from Stefano via the seasoned veteran F1 journalist and all-around nice guy, Adam Cooper, over at Autosport. Here's what Stefano. Now, see if what Stefano's talking about resonates what we have already been talking about on the podcast. And then you, too, may also think that Stefano listens to this podcast. You may also think that I'm full of crap. And you would probably be closer to right there. Let's go. First off, quote, Stefano said, "First of all, if a team is faster than the others, congratulations. They did a better job than the others. It's the duty of the FIA as the regulator to make sure that they check the compliance of the car with the regulations. If you look at the others, the other teams are very close, very, very close. I'm very confident that with the budget cap, the situation will evolve in the best way for the better competition. But on the other hand, there is one thing that is interesting to see in the new markets, where the new audience is coming in that is not a, what does he say? That is not a really important factor, meaning the domination. It's more, let's say, for the avid fans, that if you see a car that is dominant, that's creating a level of less interest. For the new markets, for the new fans that are coming to the business, this is not really very important. And for us, it's important because we want to make sure that this is a great competition in the that there is great competition in the ecosystem. But I would say, if I look today in the markets where we are growing, this factor is not so relevant as you think. And this is, in a way, very interesting to share, but that's the truth, end quote. So let me paraphrase, shall I?
Okay.
But
How does he know that? Like, what did he? This is like Bernie Eccleston. I talked to some friends. Bahrain is fine.
yeah, I talked to some friends. The gold medals is a better idea.
Right. What?
Right.
Okay.
So this is a bit of a word salad. All right.
As the CEO should do, right?
Yeah, obfuscate the situation, overwhelm it with words, and then everyone's like goes blissfully into the future, not really knowing what's going on.
I wrote one sentence, I put it into the Ron Dennis translator, and this is what came out.
It's exactly right. This is very, very Ron.
Nice, Ron.
Now, let me paraphrase just a little bit. What he is saying, in essence, if I can be so bold, and if you'll indulge me at home, is that he is saying that it's really not the new fans in F1 or the DTS fans that have an issue with Red Bull's domination. It's really the veteran fans, the older fans. They have a big issue. All right. Now,
that's because they came in as Red Bull fans, right? It's what Team LH is suffering from now, right? If you started watching when Mercedes was dominant and Team LH was the greatest thing ever, you're all like, yeah, woo, Lewis Hamilton. Now it's like, oh, not so fun, is it? Right.
Right.
So if you came into the sport as a Red Bull fan, then you don't see a problem with it. Give it 5 years, you'll have a problem with it. I'm telling you, as a long suffering Mercedes fan, just McLaren fan, just keep it even.
Ferrari fan. Yeah.
Right. Don't get too excited about wins. Don't get too excited about lows. Just keep it medium, because otherwise you're going to have a heart attack, because
moderation.
Right. Like, just don't get so excited about, oh my God, we're Red Bull, we're doing great, because you will not be doing great. It's just a matter of time. And
Inevitable.
so just moderation. You still celebrate, still enjoy it, still love it. It's great. But no, hard times around the corner. And just
Hard times are coming. Winter's coming, Grace.
the winter is always coming. It always seems that 90-degree weather is coming, people. So even though it's like April, so I'm just saying, people, be moderate. But of course, if you're new to the sport, you haven't. It's like I went to Chicago in the spring. Chicago in the spring is lovely. Did you go to Chicago in the winter? No, you haven't been there yet. Give it a whole year before you say, I want to live in Chicago, because you need to experience all 4 seasons there before you decide this is where I want to live. That's what I'm saying. You need to go through the whole seasonal cycle of F1 fandom before you're just like, this is great, I want to live here forever. Yay. Because winter's coming, people. Just be prepared.
So I think what we're saying in essence, that Mercedes is basically like winter in Chicago right now.
Yeah, right now. Absolutely. They've been through 2 years of winter is what they're going through.
Yeah.
And occasionally they hear some birds chirping and they think, whoa, maybe winter's over. Or they see like that one crocus poking up through the snow and they're like, oh, spring, it's so close. But I'm just saying, people.
Joy.
Yay, crocuses!
And if Mercedes has had a couple years of being Chicago winters, Ferrari is like Siberian gulag
yes.
at this point. Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying is, as you are as well, as a long-term fan of a team, just know.
Yeah. Just
There's
know.
a season. Just be.
Well, I read that and I was like, okay, are you suggesting that the DTS fans or new fans don't care about the Red Bull domination? Now, I got to tell you, I'm seeing a lot of the new fans on social media are complaining about it, right?
He's full of crap.
I'm not sure where he's seeing this or where his data's from, but I just go to social media and I see usually the veterans saying what I said last week, which it ebbs and flows, right? And that it's the veteran fans, he's saying that it's the veteran fans are more critical, and I'm not sure I think that that's true. And if it is, folks, I'm talking to veteran fans out there now. Are you a veteran fan out there causing a ruckus over Red Bull domination? Seriously? Shame on you. You should know better. If you're a veteran fan and you're all robe ripping and teeth gnashing over this, you should know that performance ebbs and flows, and it is usually anchored around regulation changes, which we just had, and it takes time for other teams to catch up or a new set of regulations to change things up. You know this to be true. You know this is the case as a veteran fan, and you know how hard it is for slower teams to even reach the top or catch up with the top in Formula One, right? If there is a shred of truth to this quote, it could be possibly that veteran fans know how long it takes.
Right.
No, they know that it can take a long time for other teams to catch up with the dominant team. How long? Oh, gee, I don't know. Maybe 8 frickin' years, like Mercedes just had in domination. I'm struggling. If you're a veteran fan and you are apoplectic about Red Bull's domination right now, please reach out, because I am bereft of the logic of a veteran fan who has watched years and years or decades of Formula One, who doesn't see this natural progression and this cycle in Formula One. It's part of Formula One, right? Go ahead.
I would like to speak to not current CEO Stefano Domenicali. I want to talk to Ferrari
team boss?
Team principal. Yes. Yeah. Team principal. Stefano Domenicali. And I would like to know what that guy thinks about one team being dominant, because I'm pretty sure everybody and their grandmother during Ferrari's dominant pitched a load about that, right? Like there was a lot of like robe tearing and teeth gnashing by everybody. So
I know. I think the
he's
noise,
aware.
I think the noise, from everything I can see, and I'm just one dude, and I haven't had Atticus or Huxley research this, but I think a lot of the noise is being made primarily by new fans and, as you suggested, Mercedes and Team LH fans, right? If I'm honest, to be very frank. And I don't think F1 will see, to be even being more honest, I don't think we're going to see F1 have another 8-year term of domination like we did with Mercedes now that Liberty owns F1. I think they'll tweak the regulations more frequently to keep teams on their back foot and to manipulate the competitive edges some teams have, which, if you're fair about it, sucks for Red Bull or any other team that might rise to a dominant position that they don't have and they won't benefit for a basically frozen regulation set for another 8 years where they can really make the most out of their domination, right? And if you're McLaren, let's say, maybe they came out gangbusters and they were winning and they had a clearly dominant package. Maybe it's Renault and maybe they got their engine completely sorted. It's producing more horsepower. They're starting to dominate the sport. They're not going to dominate for 8 years like Mercedes. I think they're going to change it up more frequently for that. What did he call good competition within the ecosystem? So if they're willing to change the regulations in season to add a whole different event like sprint race qualifying, then I could see this getting a little, I would say a little frustrating for teams.
I wasn't sure what word you were going to go with.
Yeah, I was trying to think of a polite word to say. This is going to cause friction if you're going to, yeah. And I think this is what Max was kind of alluding to, saying, "Hey, if we're just going to keep changing stuff, mid-season, all this crap, this isn't fun anymore, and I don't want to do that. Stop messing with it." Because see, in Max's, I think you could say, well, it's because he's winning everything. He's got a dumb team. I don't know.
Think that's true.
I don't think that's it. I think Max is the kind of personality that finds sprint races and qualifying for sprint races just white noise. It's the race on Sunday. It's the championship on Sunday that matters to him. And I don't think he really is that interested in all the superfluous events around a weekend, no matter how many they try to add.
He's not interested in any of it.
I don't. Yeah, right.
And I mean, right, like neither is Kimi Räikkönen, but Max Verstappen isn't as funny as Kimi Räikkönen or isn't as quirky as Kimi Räikkönen, right? But Kimi was the same way. Like, I don't like any of this. Why do you make me do all this other stuff, right? I just want to race the car and that's it. So I think that, I just think listening to this as well, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure that you watch other sports. And most people I know watch more than one sport. This happens in every sport. Why does he talk about it like, oh, this is only Formula One, as if Formula One is special, lives in a vacuum, is the first sport to experience this? Like, I mean, there's always a balance because people do want to see different people win, which is why his whole, like, people don't mind the Red Bull up. They do. People still hate the Patriots. The Patriots have sucked for like 5 years. We will still continue to hate the Patriots. It doesn't matter. It's going to take a long time before that shine goes away, even though, they don't got that shine no more, right? Same thing with the Lakers. People will hate the Lakers. Not doing so well, doesn't matter. That shine's going to be there for a while. So I just think that every sport has that, and you can't ever just, people don't mind. People do mind, and your sport isn't special. So what three people, that's why I want to know, like, Stefano, if I was a reporter, I would have been like, and your data source is what? Because you said people are telling you. What people? Because the people I talk to aren't telling me this. So I'm interested. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe there's an important demographic group that I'm not talking to. I want to know. Who are these people? I
follow a lot of, I guess it's truly a blessing. One of the blessings of being around as long as you and I have doing this podcast, it's got like over 900 episodes. So we've been around doing this for 16 years, is that, I follow a lot of listeners that have been listening for years. Right.
Right.
And, so I know these are veteran fans, and I don't see a lot of them grousing about Red Bull. I think they understand regulation changes usually beget some upset apple cart like this, and it happens. And teams have, and Stefano knows that. So does Total Wolf. So does Christian Horner. He just lived through a downturn for 8 years. So does Ferrari. They've had their every team boss on that grid knows this. All the drivers know this. The mechanics, the teams themselves, the engineers, they all know this. The only people that are stunned by it that I'm seeing online are the DTS fans who came in at the tail end of Mercedes domination, eight championships, and maybe they only experienced maybe a season of that, or maybe 2 seasons of that. And now you've got Red Bull, starting off on this domination, winning the first 3 races. And, maybe they were Mercedes fans or Lewis fans. They're not happy that Lewis and Mercedes are getting beat. Maybe they're not fans of Red Bull. So they're, that magnifies their frustration with Red Bull domination. But, it's okay to not be happy with it. I'm a Ferrari fan, and do you think I was elated when Mika Hakkinen won in 98 and 99? Do you think, that I was? Yeah, I know you were. You think I was just, oh gosh, I'm so happy,
I don't see this problem. Yeah.
No, it's, no, I wanted Ferrari to win. Of course I did. And then the halcyon days, 2000 and 2005, I was over the moon. But I guarantee you McLaren fans weren't. And so, that's just part of being a fan, period. It doesn't matter what sport.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I think, I don't know why. That's why I think his quote is just so what? It's kind of like, do you think I don't live in the world?
Yeah.
I don't just live in your basement, Stefano, and you just feed me your BS and that's the only nutrition I get, right? I live in this world. I see other things, right? And
yeah.
Who are you playing this for? Not me. I don't know.
Well, Adam goes on, and he's not the only. This was all 3 of these stories come out of an event, media event they had with shareholders and all that, and the journalists were there.
Love it.
So Adam goes on to quote, also, Liberty Media CEO Greg Popcorn Fart Maffei weighed in too. And yes, he did use that in a quote. He said, quote, the history of F1 is that there have been teams that had to run. Red Bull had a run. Mercedes had a long run. But you look behind that, and we're actually seeing more overtaking and more competition than ever. I think we can look statistically that there has been more overtaking this year than in prior years. And I think you'll see more of that. So there is excitement on the track. And as Stefano rightly points out, it's 3 races. We'll see how the year goes. Now, he's correct that a team having a run is kind of F1's thing.
Right.
But the competition behind the leader really is quite good right now. If you consider Ferrari, Mercedes, Aston Martin, potentially Alpine, all battling for 2nd through 5th, right? This is all in the championship. This is all really good racing going on back there, and that's what I've been watching pretty closely, regardless of what Max and or Sergio may or may not be doing. If you just watch F1 for the leader, then you may be missing some really good action.
You're definitely missing.
Yeah, you're missing some good action. And to that point, I would say if Greg seriously believes that, which I think he does, he should send out a memo to the TV crew.
Yeah, exactly.
To focus more on the best of the rest in midfield battles. But having said that, I'm not being critical of Greg or the TV production. In fairness, I do think they've improved that in the last couple of years as well, right? But they really might focus more on that. They could, I'm not saying artificially big it up, but there's so much money at stake between 2nd and 6th, 7th, 8th, all the way down to 10th. There's so much prize money involved that Formula 1 has a tendency to kind of gloss over why it's important to be 2nd, to be 3rd, to be 4th in the championship.
Right.
They really should unpack that a little bit and put more weight on that particular midfield race in the top 10 and really make that a bigger deal.
Yeah, like Alpine and McLaren last year, you know, right? Like,
yeah, down
that
to the
was
wire.
it, right? And so that's why I always talk about I made it 20 minutes before I brought up MotoGP, but I always like the MotoGP where they have the
Pecco.
We'll save it for the end. But anyway, that race. Anyway, so but they always have the ticker, right, with all where everybody is, but they have a little video, so we can just watch whoever's in front, and then on the big screen watch
Yes.
something interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because usually this guy is so far out there, we don't care. You're
Right.
gonna win, that's great. And
Right.
so especially when it was like Mark Marquez, like, you're gonna win, that's great, we don't care. But we want to watch all this over here
Right.
on the main screen. I realize, like, if you're listening to this, you can't see me, but so you don't want to watch the little screen, you want to watch the main screen, which is some
Yes.
battle of like 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th, or some really great passing. And I agree, I do think Formula One's gotten better at that, but I do think there's a way to say, like, yes, Max Verstappen is in the lead, but this other thing that you can't see because you're not at the track, unless you have some special pass where you can watch all the different screens and stuff like that, and you have more control over what you're viewing,
Yeah.
you know, you're really missing out on a lot by not having those battles shown and talked about. And like you said, some of I think that's always been true. The mid pack,
Mhm.
also because they have something to go for. So I always tell people that if you're going to go to a race and you're going to bring somebody new with you, you know, this is what I did when we went to Baltimore. We watched the one level under it, right? The feeder series, because those guys are fighting for their lives.
Mhm.
That racing is great. Sometimes the main event isn't that great because it's a marathon for them, right? And so
Mhm.
they're not as likely to like turn in fast or like take a gap that isn't there. But the mid pack in that same way is more likely to do that because, you know, if Ocon is doing, you fight like a lion, right? This is
Mhm.
Ocon's shot to do well. He has to go full send. He can't like, well, I don't want to break anything. I don't want to push it too hard because I saw him next week. This is his shot. You got to take it.
Yeah.
So I think that's the other reason, in the same way that those feeder series often can be more interesting than watching the main event, because their lives are on the line. They don't have 20 races or whatever we're up to, 32 races now, to like span out their whole season. This is their
Right.
chance for points. Or why, you know, like somebody from Alpha getting, you know, 3 points. Woo, that's a big celebration. Or, you know, like, you know, Nick DeVries got points. Woo, we're really excited about that. So like I agree that that's important, because it seems very unimportant if all you do is watch the front runner. I think I think it's easy to miss that kind of like why that matters, or why does Williams keep showing up? I think that's always
Right.
a like, you're never going to win, Haas. Why do you keep showing up? Right. That's an important question to ask and to look into. So
Yeah, it is. And I know some of you may be thinking, hey, look, but if you focus all the TV time on midfield, it means less TV time for Red Bull. But I will say that winning in Formula One, winning is its own reward, right?
yeah, for sure.
So more TV time for midfield for sponsors, brand exposure is a good thing for these
I
teams,
want that. Mhm.
because leaders get their share of TV time, but they also get a hell of a lot of prize money, right? So I think that's an important factor, and I think that's something that that Formula One could do. I'm not saying they are better at focusing on the midfield battles and all the battles and the points, and I think they've gotten quite a bit better in the last probably year and a half.
I think,
But I think that they could do, like you said, and
But I think it's-
make it a bigger deal.
I think it's Drive to Survive that's shown them that that's possible.
Yeah, right.
Right, because you have 7 episodes or whatever, and they each focus on a team, and so
Yeah.
you have a whole episode on Haas. Who cares?
Yeah.
And yet Gunther Steiner is the biggest star they have right now. Why? Right? Like, so I think you can do a whole episode on Alpine, and it's interesting. So I think that maybe that's some positive effect of Drive to Survive, that you can have a whole series. People are interested in not just Mercedes and Red Bull, and I'm going to say McLaren just because that's where my heart is. They are also interested in the other teams that are also on the track, and,
Right.
and AlphaTauri, and, anybody else that's not
Yeah.
always in the front. I think Drive
agree.
to Survive shows that that's an interesting story as well.
I do too, and I think that's been a real upside of DTS. The next Stefano Domenicali story I have is Domenicali on Dosh, on money. You'll recall that the FIA opened up the application process to bring new teams into the sport, and while that process should culminate into some sort of result by June, the new teams, if any are approved, would have to pay a $200 million entrance fee, or what they call, quote, dilution fee. Now, the dilution fee was set several years ago, and it is supposed to offset the dilution or losses in team revenue that the existing teams might face with a new team entering the paddock and taking some of those points. All right. So that's the thought. That's been there for quite a while. Several weeks ago, I mentioned this, and I was a little perplexed at the time, maybe you'll remember, with the attitude of the other team bosses, namely Total Wolf, demanding that new teams show how they will increase the revenue of the sport. Haas was never required to do that. You know, Gene didn't have to come over with a 3-year-old Dell laptop and a PowerPoint showing how he was going to bring revenue and what the total addressable market was and what his whole, you know, go-to-market and route-to-market plan was and how they're going to generate revenue that the other teams in Formula One are seeking. And I found that interesting because why would the new teams have to prove that if Haas didn't? Isn't it up to F1 to have the right GTM and RTM to generate revenue that they want out of their series? I mean, it's not up to a new team to figure out how F1's going to make more money. Do we think Ferrari, Mercedes, and others were responsible for the explosive growth of F1 and not DTS? No, of course not.
Well, Ferrari might think they are.
Well, Ferrari would say they are, right?
Yes.
But, they're a big part of that, big brand in Formula One, but Drive to Survive really is the vehicle that exploded this, right? And so I found the comment interesting. Stefano discussed the concept of increasing the dilution fee since F1 is now more popular. And again, Adam Cooper over at Autosport carried this story. The quote is this: "The process of having another team has been launched by the FIA. In our governance, in our Concord, there's a possibility to do it. But the evaluation has to be done together to see from the technical perspective, from the sporting perspective, for the financial stability, and to make the bigger picture if a new team will give value to the league, to the sport. And there will be a different position." And I go back to one point, the so-called anti-dilution payment was done at $200 million just a couple of years ago because at the time, oh, wait a minute, who am I reading? Wait a minute, I've confused everyone. Have I? No, I haven't. Because at the time, no one would have...
We'll fix that in post.
I'll fix that in post, yeah. He said, because at the time, no one would have expected that the value of this business would rise up so much. Today, the situation is totally different, for sure. And it's our duty to make sure that we protect the business the best way we can and have a bigger picture. So that's what Stefano, so he once again saying, the FIA did open the application, but he was quick to remind, it's important to know what words mean. If you read this, you just heard him send another shot across the FIA bow.
Yes.
He said, the FIA opened the application, but it's something we do together. And we have to make sure from a technical, that's FIA, but from a sporting and a financial viability, that's up to us, right? So he's basically saying we're 2/3 of that decision process. And then he was saying that the 200 million is not enough because the sport is much bigger now and they'll determine that and it has to be evaluated. He's basically saying that the new team, financial stability, a team has to give value to the league or the sport. They have to show how they'll do that. So again, Haas didn't have to do that. Mercedes, when it bought Braun, didn't have to do that, right? And I find it interesting that any new team has to show F1 how it's going to make money by them being in there and how much money, millions, they're going to bring to F1. I think that's an interesting position. But again, Greg Popcorn Fart Maffei weighed in on the subject and said this about that. He said, back to the point about the 200 million, Manor, for those new, that was a Formula One team. It was the 11th team. Manor was the 11th team, and just before we bought into F1, late 2016, it went into administration in the UK and got sold for £1. The world has changed dramatically, end quote. Now, let me say this about that. Let me talk about this for a moment and add a little context here. It's one thing to suggest that an 11th team failed and was sold for £1, but Greg, so was Honda in 2008. Right. So let's not obfuscate the issue here. The reason HRT, Manor, and others failed was because they entered on the promise of a cost cap, and the FIA failed them by developing. Not only were they unable to get the cost cap instituted, but then they went all in and developed a new set of regulations around a hybrid engine that put 3 teams out of business and put a few others on life support, including, I might mention, that team that's now called Aston Martin.
Right.
They were almost dead because of these regulations. So I don't think you can say, well, hey, times have changed, man, or they were sold for £1 because they couldn't hack it, and times have changed. And I get it, Greg. You want to make sure. Bernie Eccleston said any viable new team to F1 should have $1 billion of burnable cash because he reckoned that's what it was going to cost, right? So I understand and I agree with Greg in that sense, but I think that's sort of making the point and missing some serious context on that. He is right in that it's a different time and the interest and sponsor engagement is much more robust. So I agree with him that it might be worth adjusting for inflation and for, honestly, the marketability of the sport right now. It's probably a different factor, a different number. How much that is? I don't know. What do you think, Grace?
Okay, so first of all, I think it's all just smoke and mirrors. It's all BS. If they wanted another team, we would have had them by now. I mean, I guess I see this whole thing as kind of like driver contracts, right? Like, yes, all the drivers have contracts, but funny how if a team really wants them, the magic happens, and now that team has that driver, right? It's only so good. So to me, there's always an eye roll with this conversation for me because it's just like, if you wanted an 11th team, it would have happened. You all would have done it by now, and this is all just, smoke and mirrors. I do also think it would be interesting. I was thinking, I mentioned that we all watch other sports in the previous story. Expansion teams happen in all sports, right? Mm-hmm. Like, so, and I wonder how that works in the United States, they often look at a market, right? So it's like, oh, well, what's the market in Seattle? Could they support, a hockey team, right? Like, or whatever, right? And so that's part of that decision is that market has to be able to support it. And there's always this like pool between the big markets and the small markets. Like in NBA, it's like OK City is never going to have as much money as LA because OK City is just a smaller market in comparison to LA or New York City that has 2 teams. So as does LA. So I would be interesting to see how that works in other countries or other sports where it's not, the United States is gigantic. And so it's all just within United States, these different markets. But I wonder how that would also apply to Formula One, or if there was similarities, or if it's just completely different because Formula One is completely different and motorsports is completely different because of the sponsors, and it's very expensive in that sense. But yeah, I agree with you. I love Greg's revisionist history. It's like, the guy it's kind of like the victor gets to write the history. Yeah, the guy that has the microphone gets to write the history, and it's just like, I just think how many. Similar to you and I and many other people when we watched Drive to Survive, it was like, are they talking about the same Baku? Did we watch that race? Yeah. Like, I wonder how many of the journos like Adam Cooper are like, what?
Yeah.
Are we talking about the same 2016? Right. Like you just very nicely pointed out for people, laid out for people, not pointed out, laid out, like it was more complicated than just.
It was more complicated than that. Yeah.
Like they just couldn't hack it. We gave those plucky kids a chance and they just couldn't hack it. And so we're not going to do that again. Yeah, that's not actually what happened.
Having an 11 team is no guarantee. They went into, they went into bankruptcy. Well, you put them there.
Right. But, the guy holding the mic gets to write the history. So it was just like, I don't think that's quite right. So I'm sure there are people in that room going, what?
Yeah, I do find it interesting. And I'm not picking on Adam at all. He's a sweet guy and a very good journalist. But I do find it interesting for some of these veteran. I get it for some of these new journalists that they're, unleashing on Formula One, and they're just, I get it. They're trying to
Right.
learn their
But
trade
Adam
or
Cooper's
whatever.
been around for eons.
But Adam,
Yeah.
John Noble, all these guys,
Right.
these guys are seasoned veterans. They've been writing about Formula One for years now.
Right.
And I'm always a little surprised that they let these people get off the hook on some of those. I mean, you don't have to be, you don't have to be confrontational, or there's no, nobody has any emotional capital in this thing to spend. I'm just kind of curious because a guy like Adam, or like I said, I'm not picking on Adam because I think he's a delightful guy and he does a great job. But I'm always surprised because, to your point, Adam's going to be hearing this and going,
What?
"Are you sure about that?" I'm always surprised they don't come back and say, "Well, wait a minute. Didn't this happen? Isn't that kind of how that went down?" Or, I don't know. It's like Formula One experienced a state of tabula rasa
Yes.
when DTS came out. It's almost like, like millennials invented F1, like nothing existed before.
It's that Men in Black thing, right?
Yeah, the little wand thing, and
Yeah.
it's kind of like, don't
Right. We don't
know.
know anymore.
I mean, Adam knows why HRT went out, and
Yeah.
so I always think it's interesting. I mean, this is probably more of one of those show up and throw up events where they
Yes.
just show up and talk and say all the crap they're going to say, and there probably isn't a lot of time to get questions in, if there
Right.
was even time. So, like I said, I'm
Right.
not picking on Adam. He's a
No,
wonderful
he's
guy.
just reporting on the
What
event.
was said. Yeah,
Right. It
yeah.
wasn't a Q&A. It wasn't
right,
a
right.
race thing. He's just telling you what they said, and that's
Right.
what, he's just reporting. It's not an op-ed, but
Right.
I do think it's like, oh, you know who you were talking to? Right? Like, okay. That's not how I remember those events
Right.
happening, but,
Right.
okay.
I was here during all that.
I was standing in this room, actually.
standing
Now
in
that you
this
mention
room,
it,
actually, yeah.
2016. Here
Right.
I was.
Here
Yeah.
I was, and I was interviewing HRT.
Yeah,
it's
it does.
interesting.
It does make it just sound like, well, yeah, we let those other hacks have a chance, and we're not going to let that happen to
They
our
blew
sport
it.
again. Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna protect our sport because those really crappy teams, they couldn't hack it. Well, time out, Chief.
It's kind of
Not
like
so
we
fast.
talk about Braun GP being, and Jensen Button having a championship, and why I put an asterisk beside it, which we talked about last week. This
We
is
did.
the same case of that. Like, that's not quite the whole story. And if all you see is these guys were in and then these guys were out, that's only the surface level story. And you have to always ask, well, why did they get involved? This is not a cheap sport. Why did they get involved if they were just going to fail? Nobody goes into any endeavor thinking they're going to fail, let alone an endeavor like Formula One, right?
No.
So what went wrong that they thought this was a good idea and now it's not, right?
And that's not right. Right.
Yeah.
I agree. And look, I'm a Ferrari fan, so it's not like I'm against manufacturers at all. The sport needs them, and they're awesome.
Yeah.
And I was really mad when BMW left and Toyota.
Oh, yeah.
And Honda.
They were at the peak of their power.
Yeah, exactly. So longtime listeners will know my feelings on this, but the privateers are a really important part of Formula One.
Right.
And so you do need to be careful on the privateers. And if Formula One is determined to get heavy-handed and sort of make light of a small team who came in and failed, I think they do wise to kind of be careful there, because privateers are very much the lifeblood of F1 as well. Now, those manufacturers bring a lot of resources and innovation, and at this point, because of the hybrids, they're bringing engine supplies, so they're important, and they carry a big stick in Formula One, and they swing a lot of political clout, as you would expect. But the privateers, keep in mind, Red Bull is a privateer. And so at this point, so is McLaren, right? You could say they're a manufacturer, but they don't make their own engines. So it's important to remember the privateers' role in this, and I think it doesn't really serve the sport very well to be heavy-handed with the whole HRT story and privateers in the sport. I think Formula One should embrace them. And to be frank with you, with the 2026 engine regulations, I think they should come up with a very effective, much less expensive engine that would allow privateers to compete at the top level with a great chassis design. So
I don't know. MotoGP figured that out.
yeah, Right.
You know, like
Right.
there are ways, and if you wanted it to happen, it exists and you could do it, but you
Yeah.
choose not to. You could have customer cars, but you choose not to do it. So
Yeah.
I'm sure a friend of the show, David Richards, would be the first one in line to help you with that problem. So
Yeah, right.
I
Hey,
just-
and it wasn't the factory Honda that won today, you know?
yeah, right. And so I think that they just shoot themselves in the foot by saying stuff
Yeah.
like this, because I agree with you. I think that you want as many new teams, because I do think that keeps it interesting, right? That gives
It
you
does.
something to see what they're about. And I just want them to be honest. I guess we've talked about the story now several weeks. I mean, it continues to be in the news, and I just think whether it's Toto Wolff or Stefano Domenicali, just why do you really not want, whether it's Michael Andretti,
Right.
any 11th team, because all this talk about, oh, it's the money. Oh, that's never the whole story. I think that's just the easiest story to put out there, but there's more to it.
Yeah,
Because if you wanted it, you'd find the money. Like, funny how that happens.
Yeah, I know.
So, I don't
let's
buy it.
see. Next up, Stefano Domenicali on Brad Pitt. So no secret that Brad
All right.
Pitt is working on a new
Yeah.
F1 movie, and I hope they do it justice, because we've seen what happens when racing movies come from Hollywood, and I'm looking at you, Driven.
Boo.
Yes.
That may be the only decision I have agreed with Bernie on.
Right. So Bernie was very anti having movies made, or any of those film crews in the paddock, and very against that. All right. Having said that, let's just assume that Brad and Jerry Bruckheimer and Joseph Kaczynski are going to do it right. Okay.
Yeah.
And they do have Lewis Hamilton as a consultant and co-producer, so I have to think that he's going to be a big asset for them, right?
Yeah.
So I assume, in the true Hollywood fashion, of course, it's injected with all of its cultural tropes and all of that always comes out of Hollywood, and that'll be all in the script too. But these days, it depends on what the storyline is and what they're doing. Stefano was quick to suggest that the movie is a good move for the sport, but they need to be careful on disrupting the actual race weekend. Here's what he said. He said, quote, "That's another way to show what we want to do, something different. When we started the collaboration with Netflix, the F1 community said, what's going on? This is not our place to be. And now we understand the power of it. And then we added the very strong presence with social media, making sure that all our drivers and teams are very active in promoting the sport. And that's another tool with the movie. Actually, we're going to start the shooting in Silverstone very soon, and you will see it will be the first movie when basically they will be within their actual racing events, meaning they're going to be racing in live race weekends or filming live race weekends. It will be quite invasive in terms of production. It's something that we need to control in a way, but it will be another way of showing that F1 never stops," end quote. So,
All right.
Stefano.
He went full circle on that too. This is
Kinda
a good
did, didn't he?
idea. It's a bad idea. It's a good idea. It's a bad idea. I don't know. Maybe it's a good idea. What speaking of the emotional roller coaster of Team
I know.
LH, that one quote was like, I'm like, so are you for the movie or not for the movie? I'm not very clear.
I know. It's how to run down both sides of a fence line,
Yeah, really, he did, right? Like, either way, he can be like, well, like I said, like...
like I said, it was going to be really intrusive and it's going to be invasive on the sport, and I warned against it. Or
Yeah.
it would be a raging success. And like I said, this is how we show we care.
Maybe I need to do this. Maybe I need to do this more at work so that
Yeah,
I
me
can just
too,
be
right.
a winner either way.
Right.
Usually I just am like, no, this is my opinion. And at the end, it either met
Yeah.
the expectations or it didn't. And I was wrong or I was right. But I've never tried to play it both ways like this. I need to learn.
I think, he mentions Netflix series.
Yeah.
And if Brad was smart, which I don't know Brad, I don't know if he is or not. I'm sure he is. If Brad was smart, he's a Missouri boy. What are you going to do?
There you
Just
go.
like me. If Brad was smart, he'd look at the pros and cons of the Drive to Survive series You see, if he makes a movie that has all of the tropes and racing storylines that are dog-eared, and as he or the writers and producers would, let me put it this way, if he makes that movie and you put a bunch of racing tropes in there and all that kind of crap and racing storylines, as he or the writers and producers would like to see F1, it won't be a reflection of F1 as it is. And this has been one of the biggest complaints about DTS. Either the movie will remain or will be a realistic reflection of how F1 is, or an idealized version of what the writers and producers would like it to be. And there's a fine line there that can be the difference between a movie like Grand Prix or a movie like Driven, right? And we often wax poetic about the elegance and awesome access that Grand Prix had, the movie Grand Prix had. And we've said for years that no movie would ever have that kind of access again. And that was true when Ecclestone was in charge. But it's a brave new world, and F1 has opened its doors. And I think, however, if they're concerned that the movie could get in the way, then they'll have to watch that very closely. But I also kind of think they've kind of learned how to manage that with Netflix being walking around the paddock for the last 5 years, right? So I think they're going to be fine on that. But you get my point on trying to enjoy. You know, I remember them interviewing, I don't know if it was Sly or who it was, on Driven, and they were, when they were doing the promotion of the movie when it just launched, and they were talking about the car race in the street, and one of them said, yeah, we just thought, you know, these cars, they're just not obtainable for normal people. We thought it would be really cool if they could like really race on streets, you know, just not on a racetrack, but on streets, and see what that's like. And it's like, you may have thought that would have been cool, but it wasn't cool.
No,
you know?
I mean, you didn't have to be a diehard Formula One fan to go, what? It's like the Fast and Furious movies, right? Like, you don't have to really be into cars to go, I don't think that's how physics work, right?
Yeah,
like,
right.
You know, but I think to that, you know, Fast and Furious knows that and leans into it, right?
Yeah, they do. Yeah,
right. So I think that's the same with Driven. I don't think you have to be like a diehard motorsports fan to go, I don't think that's how that works, right? It's not gravity. So I don't know. I think, to me, Driven was just, you had to suspend too much disbelief in order to enjoy it. And I will say Grand Prix is great, except for the dialogue. Like, if you don't watch any of the like movie part of it, is great. Like, all the footage is great, and when they're interacting with the drivers is great, but some of the storyline is a little hokey, right? So
yeah, that's the problem. And you know, it'd be like if the writers, not that they will, but I'm just using a dramatic extreme example. They're saying, hey, well, we could have this, you know, this person from Tecumseh, Iowa, who's a farmer, and he's 22, and he gets a big break to go, you know, race, and he wins Formula One. And it's like, okay, well, did he have any karting? Did he do any open wheel? Did he do any feeder series? It's not realistic.
No, right.
You know, and
even
everybody
in NASCAR,
watching is gonna know.
Right.
Yeah, even in NASCAR, you have to be Cole Trickle. Come on. You know.
That's right. But, you know what I mean? Like, that's a story. Maybe that is how.
Cruise!
Yes.
That's how it happened in the 50s and the. Sorry. That's how it happened in the 50s and the 60s, not now, right? Like,
yeah, right.
So, you know, it's kind of, you know, like the idea. Like the rich guy that just got some guys together and they're going to build a car. That's not what happens now, right?
Yeah,
Maybe that's what happened for James Hunt, but that's not what happens for Charles Leclerc, right? Like, it's not the same storyline. And I think audiences don't want that. But like you said, I think through DTS, they figured out, you know, in the except for me as a boom mic operator, they've learned how to like blend in and not be such a thing. Everybody's figured out how to work around it. You know, Brad Pitt goes to races. He's been in the pits. So, I mean, he certainly must be like, we could put a camera there. We could put but not there. You know, like you start to think about things in this like operational kind of matter, right? Like, I'm sure this is not his first rodeo, as they would say. And it'll be fine. I'm with you. I just hope it's, you know, a good movie and not a terrible movie. And, I was thinking of the scene in Ford versus Ferrari, which now I can't remember who's Christian Bale's character. Oh, I can just feel Paul is like dying on the inside.
If you ask me
It's okay. So anyway, Christian Bale's character, there's that scene when he's in the garage real early on and the lady shows up and he's like flirting with her and you're like, I was like, oh, great. It's his wife. Right. So I think that was funny because it totally plays on the trope of like race car drivers. They're just womanizers kind of thing. And of course, but it's his wife. So then it's funny that they're flirting with each other and he's just like, hey, sexy lady, what are you doing? Right. So I think that side of it, I think that movie kind of got the tropes and the tone right, because there's places where they just kind of like mock the idea, and that Matt Damon's character and Christian Bale's character and the way they kind of played off of each other. And so I think if it can capture that same sort of tone that Ford versus Ferrari got, then I think they'll do fine. I think Stay Away from Driven, that was a terrible movie. Clearly, everybody on that movie never has been to a race in their life, and really just wanted to drive some fast cars.
If it shows up and Brad Pitt meets up with Robert Duvall in a barn, and Robert's got a car in the barn, I'm turning it off.
I'm out.
Right there.
That's
out.
right. That's right. But
let's see. Grid spot mayhem. The last news article I do want to cover, and I won't spend a lot of time on this, but I do want to cover this. So you recall that Esteban Ocon got a penalty for being out of his grid spot a few weeks ago. And Alonso had the same, right? Well, Esteban doesn't think we've seen the last of this kind of penalty, saying quote, there's going to be a lot more cars this year that are going to be penalized this year. That's for sure. It just looks silly that we get penalized for these things because it can seem so simple, but it's because we can't see anything from where we are sitting.
I can't see it. Yeah.
Right. He says, we've worked a lot with my team to try and lower me in the car to have a lower position. We obviously were out of the rules, so we deserve the penalty. This made me wonder, and I'm just talking out loud. I'm just thinking out loud here. But it made me wonder, isn't it time to develop some tech to solve this issue? And I would argue that you could come up with a high brightness direct view LED display that is shaped like a rear view mirror, like a wide curved rear view mirror that attaches to the inside of the halo above the driver's head, right? And it would have a 180-degree camera angle all the way around the front of the car, like the front wing, the front wheel. You could see your front nose, all the way around 180 degrees, even maybe into the blind spots a little, right? Almost 360. And I mean, this wouldn't be that difficult to do. The idea that a driver is saying that they can't see anything is a bit of a concern to me. And it was a concern when they introduced Halo with the pillar right in dead center of the car. And I was worried about that, but perhaps an LED display on the inside of that cockpit, like a rear view mirror. So it would be not very high, but it would be wide, around the curvature of the halo. I don't know. I mean, I think it could work. I think a very thin profile, you could run 1,500 nits or more. It's easy to put an ambient light sensor on these too, for night races or changing light conditions that start in daylight and get darker. If you need help with that, folks, I happen to know people that do that. So
if Kia can do it in my road car, I don't own a Kia, but if Kia can do it in a road car, we can figure this out. Right. Or just do like if you have snow plows, right, so that they don't run over the curb, they just put like sticks in the ground, right? So that the snowplow knows where the curb is. Just do that. So each one, you just put like those little sticks, and then you just have people run across. Everybody like in tennis, right? Like the ball kids, right? So you just like launch, 20 kids across the pit. They all grab their little stick, run to the other side, jump for the fence like the little flag guy does, and then you start the race, and then everybody's in their box. But this has to be. All seriousness, I mean, they're able to hit their pit box, right? And so, I mean, I'm sure there's some slight wiggle room, like centimeters or something, or inches of wiggle room to that, but they have to get pretty close. So I wonder if it's just because in your pit box you have other visuals that you can look for to line yourself up with. You're not just looking at the ground, which you wouldn't have at a racetrack. Or do they just need to give it more of a margin? Like just make that line a little fatter and we'll be fine or something. It just seems like this is such a weird problem. It just doesn't seem very impressive if I was having a friend watch this race with me and they were like, so let me get this straight. Ocon got a penalty because he was 2 centimeters over the line or whatever he was, Really? Like that's what your sport's about? I don't think I'm going to watch this, right? It just seems like a solvable problem that, you can get in your pit box, even if you can't see
Yeah,
it.
that's a weird thing. They need to solve that. That's just kind of goofy.
So Domenicali, instead of spending all your time jabbing about, an extra team in the sport, why don't you focus on this?
Yeah, fix this.
Fix the
Stefano.
problems you have, not trying to create new ones. How about that?
Right. Yeah, stop bad mouthing HRT and get it done. All right. Let's do some Albin's Cats since you've, I've noticed your little war of attrition with Ziggy. You won. She gave up.
Eventually she gets enough dry food and then she leaves.
And she leaves. Gotcha.
I mean, it's positive reinforcement, right? She jumps up, she
Right.
annoys me. I'm busy. So I'm like, here, eat this.
Eat
Leave me
this,
alone.
yeah.
So then she learns.
It worked. Yeah.
It sure did. I'm well aware of that, but I don't really have another solution
Yeah.
other than locking them outside, and then you'll just hear the song of their people the whole podcast. And that
Yeah.
doesn't seem like a good idea either.
Right. All right. Here's some Alvin's Cats.
Get down.
All right, Grace, hit me with some Alvin's Cats this week.
All right. So first, I did want to talk a little bit about Carlos Sainz's penalty.
Yeah,
And,
with the penalty.
Yes, his time penalty, which for the record was nonsense. What
Yes.
the nonsense? I don't know. I haven't seen anybody that isn't like, this is a great idea. Great stewarding.
Well, you know what
Nonsense.
Carlos said about it.
No, it cannot be, Ricky.
No, Ricky.
I mean,
Don't
what-
lose that number.
Please,
You don't want to call nobody else.
don't. But I was just like, this is the most ludicrous thing ever. So Ferrari is appealing the penalty. First of all, I'm just like, why? Again, why is this twice in one pod where I've agreed with Bernie Eccleston? Make a decision and stick with it. You can't like jerk people around like this, right? Like that's not really great either. But so they've requested, because that's all you can do when it's a time penalty, that the stewards reconsider this thing. So it's still not solved whether or not he's in third or not. You know,
I mean, Ferrari, it's
It's always a big emotion.
it's a big emotion over there for them.
yeah. And so all right, I was like, okay, fine. So you're gonna have a hearing about this April 18th. And so today's the 16th when we're recording this. So
Yep.
once again, news breaking right after the podcast. But I was
Right.
just like, why does this take so long for them to like arbitrate? What are people doing? I don't know, but
I don't know.
I don't just let Carlos live. He's already at Ferrari. Isn't that hard enough? Hasn't he suffered enough? Just let the guy live.
Zing.
I just
Don't kick a man when he's down.
I think the steward should have been like, well, we thought about giving you a penalty, but we decided A, it was a racing incident, and B, you're already at Ferrari.
Right.
You're good.
You're good.
You'll get your own time penalty. I don't
You've
have to give it
suffered
to you. Right.
It's like your release is time served is already done.
What can my 5 seconds do to you? So I just, anyway,
agree.
I did want to mention that, and that I think just let Carlos live. It was a dumb idea. All right. So my next is Formula One related, but this is the most compelling video I think I've watched in a long time. So if you go to YouTube after you finish the podcast and you go to woodworking art, this guy, I think he's based out of Thailand, but I'm not sure. But anyway, he makes all these like wood sculptures out of like cars and stuff. But he does one of Sebastian Vettel's 2020 Ferrari. It's amazing. It's amazing to watch. Like it's one of those videos that like I just want to keep watching this guy make stuff, right? Like, and of course, it makes it seem so easy. Like, well, I could do this. I can't do this. I don't have the tools to do it. I don't have the skills to do it. No part of me wouldn't be able to nail this. But he does it with, and it's editing for sure, right? Like, but it's just done with such ease, and he gets all the little squiggly bits on the car. It's amazing. So I did want to share that with people. Woodworking art. And I hope this guy has some kids in the Cub Scouts, because I mean, he would make some mean Pinewood Derby cars, and maybe they wouldn't win. Maybe they're not the lightest or the most aerodynamic cars, but it would be the coolest entry, and all the parents would be like, yo, what are you working on over there? Can you work on my Pinewood Derby car?
Right,
So
right.
it was pretty sweet. So
Cool.
check that out. And then a little more Formula One related. So first of all, I wanted to let everybody know that my boy Yuki Tsunoda now has his own YouTube channel called YukiTube. They just released the first episode. It's mostly him exercising and singing. That's like really pretty much the whole like 10-minute episode, but I'm always here for the Yuki content. So
yeah, right.
give YukiTube a view and enjoy. Let them know you heard it here first, right? It's great.
Yeah.
You'll laugh, you'll cry. There's no Pierre Gasly. I wish they would have done this when they were still teammates, because them together was like Carlando. It was great.
It was.
So I missed that. I also did want to ask just one more time, have you watched the Marc Marquez documentary yet?
I started it.
All right,
Yes.
woo, we're making progress.
I did. Yeah, the whole dead opening.
Yeah.
It's a little heart-wrenching, you know?
All of it's heart-wrenching.
Yeah,
yes.
and then he
You're
gets
just
so I'm almost done with episode 1. So I have started. He's moved to Madrid, right?
Yes.
With his brother and so the whole thing with his arm. Yeah. So I've started. Yeah.
Okay.
So far it's really good. I mean, it's well
really
done.
Good.
Yeah.
I thought so too. I thought.
I mean, and if you're not a MotoGP fan, GP fan,
wrong with you?
Marquez is an 8-time champion.
Yeah, across all the series. Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's great, and I just think the insight. I mean, right? One of the criticisms, I think I mentioned this, right? That him and his brother are co-producers. It's their, production company. But I just thought it was just really fascinating insight, and just, it just gets better. So just wait. But it's fun. And the first episode you get to meet his like entourage and his friends and his family and his dad. And so, because I always think that because his dad, goes to all of their races. And so I always think that, they should always use that little box that I was talking about before, that when they show the, what should be Pecco, but then falls off his bike, and so then it's not. But right on Rins. It's always everybody loves an Alex Rins win, so that's always good. Good for Honda.
Alex.
So but that should just be his dad, right? Like if you don't have anything else to show us, just show us his dad. That would be fine.
Right.
I'd watch that. His dad is so entertaining to watch. So but that's good. Well, then I'll ask you next week.
Yes.
And we'll see if you've made it through a couple more episodes, because there's only like 5 of them. So I believe in you that you can do it.
Right.
All right. It's really good. Okay.
All right. Cool. Let's see. I got some no shit headlines. Here we go. First one is Max Verstappen not having fun at Red Bull after strange retirement threat.
First of all, you're not having fun at Red Bull, because I don't think you have fun anywhere.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
is he a not have fun guy?
No, I think he does have fun, but I just think that he's just like, he reminds me kind of Kimi Räikkönen with a different accent. He just sort of is like over all of this. Yeah. I mean, they hired Ricciardo so that Max doesn't have to do any of the press stuff, Yeah,
right.
Max doesn't do any of that stuff now. And, that's fine by him for sure. And Ricciardo is much more entertaining. I'd much rather watch Ricciardo than
D-Rick is, he's good at that.
Yeah, Max, when he doesn't want to be there, is like the opposite of George Russell. I'm sure George Russell doesn't want to do all this stuff either, but he plays the game and he's perfected the answers, and he does his thing. But Max is just like, again, talking to a petulant teenager about their day at school. Fine.
Right.
Gym. Yes. It's fine.
Maybe.
I hate you. I'm going to go into my room now.
Right.
Bye. That's Max Verstappen. If he doesn't want to be there now, when it's something he wants to do, like,
he's fully in.
Yeah. And I think when he was teammates with Alex Albon, they did a lot of this on box videos, because Alex Albon, much like I often talk about Sebastian Vettel, Alex Albon is also able to kind of pull personality out of people. So I think that you really did see that Max is entertaining. He does have a personality, but I just think when he doesn't want to do it, he's just like, no.
Right.
Fine. Smells great. I hate you people.
I agree. Yeah, it's totally right. I totally agree.
I don't know. I think that's such a weird thing, though. He's just like, I'm over all of this, just because, I said I would retire if Stefano Domenicali keeps, flapping his gums.
That's so true.
Are the threats from like fans? No, from Red Bull. Who's threatening
his
him?
Retirement threat, when he said, if Formula 1 keeps changing on the regulations, and I'm not really.
He is not having fun. Yeah, that part. No, he's a racer. That's what he wants to do. He doesn't want to have to do all this other crap. Just like Kimi.
The next headline, you're going to love this one. Mick Schumacher furiously slammed by X1 boss as Michael's son racks up £1.7 million bill. So did you know that the Gunther has a new book out called Surviving to Drive. See what he did there?
I
See
know.
what he did?
That's what the eye roll was for the name of his book. Really? That
Like
was the
Gunther.
best.
Come on, man.
Oh my God.
Drive
Is there...
to Survive has been, I can't tell if it's been more beneficial for F1 or Gunther personally.
Oh, for sure it's been beneficial
Yeah.
for Gunther. I think this last season, absolutely. I think between Ricky, I mean, the fact that they did like that, like goodbye montage for Ricciardo, and they'll do the same thing for Gunther because that really has been their cash cow. I think without those two, people would have got bored with this a long time ago. They're very entertaining and they just play to the cameras and it works out really well for them. But yeah, I just think, yeah, of course, Surviving to Drive is what he would call his book because he really owes them everything.
Yeah.
But
all right.
Good
Let's see. Next headline
Mm-hmm.
is Lewis Hamilton hints at career change as he starts new business venture away from F1 in New York.
All right.
Apparently, Grace, it's a new fast food chain. Yeah.
Okay.
And their
Yes, vegan.
tagline is it's 0% cow, 100% wow.
All right. Well, watch out for the avocado poisoning. I just think that
I'll pass, Lewis. No thanks.
100%. Wow. I hope they're just workshopping that one. I think that is not a winner.
0% cow, 100% wow. Hey, it's Lewis Hamilton. Come on down.
Woo, 100%. Wow. Oh, yeah. I like the idea of them doing commercials like they're like local car dealers. Like that would be great.
Kurt Russell in used cars, you know?
Yes. Yes.
That'd be perfect. Put Lewis in like that plaid sport coat and the blue Sandsabelt slacks. Put him out there at the curb of the shop, and that
exactly.
would be awesome.
And like the squiggly arm guy.
Yeah.
I would like to note that Ziggy won.
Yes, Ziggy.
She's back. I did not win.
They're back.
She's never gonna leave.
And Ziggy would definitely not be interested if it's 0% cow, 100% wow.
No, maybe cow. She tends to like chicken. 100% chicken. She's all for that.
She's all for chicken, man. Let's see. The next and final headline is, quote, I'm an F1 legend, and Max Verstappen should walk away from the sport because he's not having fun. This was attributed to Damon Hill.
Okay.
Now, before you think, well, he's got the cheek here, right? I'm an F1 legend, and Max Verstappen. I thought, what is it?
Damon Hill.
In fairness, it was in a podcast on Sky Sports F1. I didn't listen to the podcast. Maybe he does say that in there. I don't know, but I went and read the article because I thought, I don't know that.
That doesn't seem like something he would say.
It doesn't seem like Damon Hill would say something like that. I'm an F1 legend, and Max Verstappen. It just doesn't sound very Damon to me, right?
No.
I read the whole damn article. And I read all of his quotes. He didn't say that in any of the quotes. So I don't know if it's something he said on the podcast that I don't know. But anyway.
I'm going to now refer to him as, like
F1 legend.
So,
Damon Hill.
I mean, he is an F1 legend, I guess. But I mean, that part's fair. It's him calling himself an F1 legend.
Referring to himself. Yeah.
Right. So like self-appointed F1 legend Damon Hill said, right? Like
I don't
that's
know
what
that. You bring up a good point. Those listen. Would you consider Damon Hill an F1 legend, and all that entails?
Not yet, because I do think that. Okay, so I think one of those things are built on success, right? So you have to have some success to be a legend.
He had one championship.
Right. Also, you have to have.
And then
time.
was fired after winning that championship.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, talk about your revisionist history. So, no, would I call Damon Hill a legend? No, because I don't think he's had the skill, success, or the time, right? Maybe 20 years from now, it'll be a different story. But, like, Damon Hill's still doing commentary. I think you can't really call somebody a legend when it's still like, oh, look, there goes Damon Hill, Right. But I don't think so. Not as somebody who watched it. But I think anybody... I'm a firm believer if you have to say to somebody, I'm the boss, you're not the boss, right? Like the second you have to say I'm a legend, you're not a legend.
Yeah, but
right?
see, I don't. I'm doubting he actually said that.
I think so
what the
too.
Headline says.
But now if it was Jacques Villeneuve, I'd 100% believe he called himself
if it was Jacques,
a legend.
I might believe that one. Yeah, I tweeted a picture of him. They had a picture of him, and I swear as the days go on by, he looks more and more like Michael Avenatti, the Stormy Daniels lawyer. I think he's in prison now, but anyway, he looks like him, and I was like,
who knows? I
had
mean,
people say, "Oh, way to insult JV," and then I had other people say, "Oh, way to insult Michael Avenatti." I was like,
you know what? Talk about needing Stefano Domenicali's ability to talk down both sides of the fence.
Yeah, no
that is
kidding.
for sure one of those. But yeah, some people I could definitely see might say something like that, but not Damon Hill. It doesn't seem to be his style. But that great headline. I'm sure he'd be pissed too. Like if that was me, I'd be like, I didn't say that. Now you just made me sound like a walking ego. What's this?
Like I said, I don't know Damon. I've never met him, but having read his book, and this is not like something I think he would say, and I kind of feel like he would be a little embarrassed or mortified that
absolutely
headline suggests that he said it. It just doesn't seem his milieu, if you will.
Now, I do believe he would say, if you're not having fun, walk away. I mean, I think that's true of anybody.
Well, in the article, he was pretty adamant. Max should just leave. I mean, he should just go. And because Damon, I know you're not a Max fan. I know that. You're a Lewis fan, and you would love for Max to leave right now.
But I mean, I think that there's as somebody who's had more jobs than I think people expect that I've had in my life. At some point, you're hitting your head against the wall so much that it's like not changing, and it's time for you to change because this isn't changing. So I'm going to go somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
And if that's where Max is, then by all means, find another place that makes you happy because life is short, and you're in a dangerous sport. Like I run a survey. I'm most likely not, knock on wood, not going to die from doing that. You could die. If you're not having fun,
for sure,
if you're not enjoying this, if this doesn't spark joy for you, then you should find something that does spark joy for you because your life is on the line. I also don't have his paycheck, but that's
pretty fun.
I definitely have worked with people that it's just like, this just isn't a good fit for you. I'm a fan of everybody has a place in this world somewhere. And sometimes you just end up in this place and this just isn't the right fit for you at this moment. So try something else. Maybe that's a better fit. Maybe you come back, maybe you don't, but right now this isn't working for you. So,
and what do you think that other thing would be for Max?
I mean, he could go into some other, first of all, he could do nothing. He could do a Nico Rosberg and do nothing, right? Or come back as a commentator, right? Like, I certainly
don't know if he'd make a very good commentator, though. Maybe he would in Dutch.
Maybe. And then he really would be Kimi Räikkönen, right? So, or maybe if he was paired up with Jensen Button or Alex Albon or somebody that could kind of bring the insight. I mean, because that's how I think of Ben Spies was that way too. Like if you had the right interviewer, you could get a lot from Ben Spies, but just expecting him to be gregarious, that really wasn't his personality. That's just not who he was or is, But I think that maybe not being a commentary, but he could do nothing. He could go open a fast food chain, 100% cow. Oh, zero. Oh, no, he should do the opposite. He should open up a fast food chain
cow,
in New York.
Zero wow.
Right. That would be great. That would be great.
Awesome.
Do the opposite and be right next to Lewis. And they could both have electric signs, right?
That'd
eat
be perfect.
here. Yeah, that would be great. I mean, there's so many other things he could do with his life. He could get married, have kids, go somewhere else, or go to DTM or something,
I think he should quit and start a Jackie Earl Haley fan club.
There you go.
Good. Why not? Yeah.
I don't just race his dad on sand dunes. I don't know. You have options, man.
Right.
And so I think that, if you weren't having fun, I agree with that. But Damon Hill, self-entitled Formula One legend, might have a point.
Exactly.
Self-appointed F1 legend.
That's it. All right. Well, that does it for this podcast. That's what we think about Stefano Domenicali. But let us know what you think about Stefano Domenicali and the way that F1 is heading. Share your opinion. Just do it with decorum and civility, as always, over at the Parc Fermé. Look, I don't ask very often, but if you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell. It does help us out. So if you just go and search it, just subscribe. Why not? What's it going to hurt? So every once in a while, in your little bell icon, they have a little red dot. You can ignore it, but, it helps out. So like and follow. And if you like the podcast, you can go over to iTunes and give us a good rating, or on your podcast platform of your choice. That would be super nice to do that.
And if you don't like it, why are you still listening? It's an hour and a half later.
Stop listening. Yes. And a big thank you to all our Scottish listeners that reached out to
There
me.
you go. Oh, that's right. We asked them last week.
We did. We said, Scottish listeners, listen, reach out to us. Let us
Very
know.
good.
I had some wonderful Scottish folk that listen. One, I'm not going to say the person's name because he didn't, give me permission to. But I've been listening since like 2012.
It was Jackie Stewart, wasn't it?
No. But it was Stefano Domenicali.
I knew it.
Yeah.
I knew it.
Yeah.
He's just been storing it up. No, I joke aside. That's great. That's
Yeah.
kind of crazy.
It
2012.
is. That is
Wow.
2012. So my next big call out is to our German listeners.
Okay.
Nein, Nick Schießen. So where are they? Because I was thinking the other day, so Scottish listeners, because I didn't know, everybody wants to lump them into the UK, but so that was great to hear. So I was saying, all right, so where else? Because I know we have German listeners. I can see the download locations and what country, but there's no Schumacher anymore, no Vettel anymore. The Hulk is back, so that's good.
Yeah.
But give us a shout out if you're
Speaking of Vettel, in the earlier story about Domenicali, where he was talking about how, he's making all the teams have social media now. Like, well, yeah, Vettel's gone. Like, you can make that statement now. Like, why didn't you make the statement a year ago? That would have been more fun for you to make Vettel have
a social media and promote the sport. Yeah, exactly.
Right. As opposed to he had one social media post and it was when he was leaving.
Right. So anyway, give us a shout out if you're in Deutschland. That would be great.
Yeah.
And then a huge thank you to our Patreon supporters, because we could not do and would not do this podcast if it were not for our incredibly generous Patreon supporters. So just everyone else out there in the world that's not a Patreon supporter, just know it's because of this cadre of wonderful fans that support us. That's why we have this podcast. So if you're ever feeling generous, you could go to our Patreon page. It's you can find a link at the bottom left of our website, or in the top right in the sidebar. It says support us. You click on that. It'll take you over there. Huge thank you. And for all of our Patreon listeners, you get a commercial-free podcast. No commercials.
That's right. No mother's polish for you.
No mother's polish. None of that nonsense. You get a commercial-free podcast. Yes. All right, Grace. Until we do this next week, we're going to come back. We're going to cover stuff. I promise I'm trying hard not to talk about Stefano. But
it's another off week. I'm sure he'll still say something.
Yeah, he will.
Because he does have to, if nothing else, hype up the sport.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
it's the
his
same
job.
thing. Like, all of a sudden he's like, shit, we have 3 weeks with no Formula One. I gotta do something quick. Call the press.
Right. We need some controversy.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Do something. So I'm sure he'll have, self-titled F1 legend Damon Hill say something crazy so that, he can drum up some support this week. So I'm sure for next week, it'll be fine.
It'll be fine. It'll be good. Everything's fine. All right. Well, until next week, when we come back to do it all over again, this is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camber, saying so long, Grace.
See you next week.
That's it, man. It's game over, man. It's game over.